fellows on the steering committee here with John, our newest steering committee person. So, is there anything else I need to say?
About me?
Yeah. No.
I'm not really used to present at an audience.
Speak
I
louder.
told everybody to sit in the other room.
Yeah. So I'm not a charismatic speaker or something, but in the past 3 years or so, I've been involved with really actively with issues like the introduction of the parallel currency in Greece, or the creation of a national development bank in Greece, and especially about the National Development Bank. I've done a lot of work, which is private, voluntary work. And last year I was called by the Deputy Finance Minister, Professor Nikolaos, to participate in a project team that would actually present to the government a plan for the creation of a national development bank. Unfortunately or fortunately, I don't know, my idea came along with the proposal for the introduction of a complementary means of payment in Greece. It went along with the National Development Bank, although it could have been two separate proposals. Nothing actually moved on because of the agreement, memorandum number 3. And what I want to present is not really the idea of a complementary currency. But I remember, I think 20 years ago, I first heard for the first time in my life in JFK, the film by Oliver Stone, the term, it's the industrial military complex. I think I'm 45 years old now. I can say that it's the monetary legal complex. It's not the industrial military complex. And that's the problem, as far as I can understand it at the moment, both in Greece, in the Eurozone, and in the world. It's a banking problem, it's a banking crisis, it's a crisis of the monetary system. So, it's really, I hope it's not going to be boring, because some stuff are really legal. And this is a disclaimer, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not an economist. This is all private work, it's private research. So, and the purpose is to present the institutional framework that regulates the issuance and circulation of legal tender. That's a very, very important term in the Eurozone. It's not that important in the United States or in England, but it's really important in the Eurozone. And to explore the possibility for the introduction of a complementary means of payment. And I learned in the past 2 years to select the words very carefully. Because if you start talking about parallel currencies, everyone goes bananas, as if something, you bring the world upside down. So it's really what it says, it's complementary means of payment. It's not legal tender, it's not banknotes, it's not those things. So the structure is what happened in Greece, very briefly, from a monetary perspective, not how the economy moved, what happened with unemployment, just the monetary perspective. And then I'll turn into the EU primary law regarding the euro, the regulation for the introduction of the euro into the Eurozone countries. I will focus a bit on the idea of legal tender. On a report that was presented to the Commission back in 2012, which is, we just copy-paste this part, is fascinating stuff if you get into it. it's fascinating, although it sounds boring. And then let's speak about central bank statutes, especially not statutes, but the statute of the Bank of Greece, which was probably the major problem for the introduction of the complementary currency, okay? It's the currency which sold in Greece. And there was this development that I found out today, which is, I think I can boast a little bit. I've been trying to change something in the statute of the Bank of Greece, and I find today that it has been changed. I'll talk about it later. So what was the problem? And what is the problem in Greece? I don't know if we have economists here or not. Okay. This is monetary circulation on an indexized, back from 2001 to May 2016. Now the blue line is what we call cash and coins. And you can see that it is booming, especially after 2007, 2009. It's booming, really.
Sorry, can I, small interruption. Does it include electronic money in the banks? Just cash and, just coins?
The definition of currency in circulation is only cash, banknotes, and
Banknotes.
nothing else.
Banknotes and coins.
And M3 is really the widest measure of currency, of money, let's say, okay, that circulates in the economy, which includes deposits and other securities. Okay, you can see that from 2012 to 2016, the broad base is really almost flat. Okay. The cash base has increased, and that reflects in the past 2 or 3 years, 5 years, the credibility problem, okay, and confidence problem. So people are just withdrawing money from the banks. So currency in circulation has quadrupled in 15 years, but M3 has remained almost unchanged. But since 2009, and let's say that September 2009 or October 2009 is a turning point. We had a new government, and suddenly things start to go wrong. Greece loses access to the markets in 2010. The banking system has problems. Since 2010, currency in circulation has increased by 9.7 billion euros, but the broad base has declined by 111 billion. And the figures for the currency in circulation do not include cash that has been imported by the Bank of Greece to be distributed to the ATMs, which is a figure, if I remember correctly, at the moment around 13 billion euros. Okay. So we have a monetary contraction. Okay. Although cash is increasing, we have a monetary contraction. That's, somebody could say that this is a monetary recession.
Can I interrupt again? Sorry. If I'm too, spasticos, please. M3 includes electronic money.
M3, yes.
Okay.
But it does not include
Deposits,
this,
bank deposits.
This measure, the way that it has been structured here is that M3 does not include banknotes and coins.
Yes.
Central banks report the M3 in 2 figures, one with banknotes and coins and one without banknotes and coins. So,
So
sorry.
you have withdrawn you have withdrawn the banknotes from the
yes,
M3.
it's the 111 billion does not include banknotes.
Okay.
Both graphs are counted to 100, or
Yes,
they have a
to have a common base. Just to
common
see-
base. But if you put it in comparison, M3 would
Yes,
be
it's much
really
higher.
much higher. Okay, I'm just
Well,
saying.
what I'm saying, what I'm
some people do it.
I did this on purpose because in the end of the day, we need to understand what is money.
Yeah.
Okay, because people think that money is cash. So cash has been booming, but there's no money.
Well, the value of the value has decreased by consequence of what you just said.
Of course.
Yes.
Not the value, but the
Because
circulation.
you didn't say anything about the value, but that's what you're implying.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. It could.
So what is money? So we understand money as being cash, but cash is really almost irrelevant. As if it doesn't exist. And this is a direct quote from the Bank of England. Money comes into existence from the commercial banking systems giving loans, and at the same time creating for the equivalent amount deposits in the name of the borrower. So, if this is the definition of how money comes into existence, what's the problem? Now, this is from a conference 3 years ago. And this is by Professor Richard Werner. Werner is the guy who invented the term quantitative easing. And it has nothing to do with what's going on today.
He's not responsible.
He
Okay.
is not responsible for it, with the way that the policy has been implemented by central banks. So what was the problem in Greece? And I give you the black line are banknotes. Actually, it's a credit based on the year-on-year growth. And
Purple.
what's this? I can't see it. The other one, the colored one, the colored line. It's a proxy that Werner creates for GDP growth and central bank liquidity. Now, the gap that you see here between 95 and 2007 is a reflection of credit to GDP gap. If credit grows faster than GDP, what you create is actually asset bubbles, or you finance fiscal deficits or current account deficits. And that was the problem in Greece. Credit was growing much faster than GDP. And when after 2007 and the banking crisis started, the subprime crisis in the United States, the banking sector started to contract their balance sheets. What we have is a reduction in the credit growth. Actually, we have credit contraction, and eventually led to the contraction of the monetary base, since the money supply, more than 90% of it is loans coming from the commercial banking sector. So that's the, let's say, that's the monetary perspective of the crisis. It doesn't mean that Greece doesn't have structural problems, etc., etc. Okay, we don't need to reform the country. It's simply a monetary perspective. So why do you need a complementary means of payment? Because you need something to act anti-cyclically in this monetary contraction. So let's get into what does the Eurozone say, the European Union say about the Euro. That's from the Treaty on the Functioning of the European Union. It's the international treaty, regulates everything in the European Union. The European Central Bank has sometimes the exclusive right to authorize the issue of Euro banknotes, and only such notes to have the status of legal tender. So it's really, when you're talking about the Euro, in the Eurozone, you're talking about Euro banknotes, nothing else. But that is what is legal tender, and that's, keep that in the back of your minds, because it's very interesting, it becomes very interesting later on. It's that it is only Euro banknotes that they are legal tender. Remember that we said earlier, I mean, the money supply, more than 90% of it is not banknotes, it's not cash.
Yeah.
So how do we settle our payments? How do we settle our debts? So, and the and the Treaty of the European Union, it refers to banknotes and legal tender. No mention about money or currency. I mean, the words don't even exist. So, there was a regulation that actually regulated the transitional period for the introduction of the euro from national currencies to the euro. Within this regulation, which is not 78, it's 98 here, that's a mistake. There is in the article of that regulation, the article 7 of that regulation is very interesting. In the substitution of the euro for the currency of each participating member state shall not in itself have the effect of altering the denomination of legal instruments in existence on the date of substitution. The date of substitution. So what does this mean? Suppose that there might be a country where we have two legal tenders. Or suppose that there might be a country, and there is, that there was a legal instrument that was circulating within that country for the settlement of monetary or non-monetary debts. What does it say here? The introduction of the euro currency shall not in itself have the effect of altering the denomination of other legal instruments. And this is important because it says you can have more than one currency. Maybe not legal tenders.
Not really. It says on the date of substitution.
Yes,
The date.
but it will not enter, it will not change them. But I'll tell you why. Suppose that Switzerland,
Which is not in the euro.
yes, suppose that Switzerland enters the Eurozone. Now in Switzerland, there are two currencies. One, which is the franc, the French franc, the Swiss franc, which is the legal tender. The second one is the weird. It's a private currency. It's a digital currency. It's not legal tender. It's run by a bank, the weird bank. It's been used by 60 or 70,000 members. And they can settle their transactions, and that's very, very important, up to 20% by using the weird. But within the Eurozone, you have legislation like the VAT, and you have other legislation. I mean, if you can settle your transactions in something which is not the euro, how do you collect VAT? Okay, so the introduction of the euro would not alter existing legal instruments, and that is important because what I'm trying to say is I'm trying to find a way to bypass the system, okay, to allow.
Yes, there is no Greek weird.
Of course, can we make it?
Okay.
So, and how do they define legal instruments? Blah, 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 blah. Payment instruments other than banknotes and coins, and other instruments with legal effect. That could be a bank check, it would be a digital, it would be Bitcoin, be that as it may. Okay? That's important. I mean, on the one hand, they are saying to us, it's banknotes, euro banknotes are legal tender. But on the legislation, the regulation that regulates the introduction of the euro, legal instruments are any payment instruments other than banknotes and coins, which are by definition not legal tender. If we know what legal tender is, because apparently, as we will see later, we don't know what legal tender is. Not my words, the European Union. Well, jumping to a conclusion here, it's just a legal payment instrument. Let's call it Bitcoin for purposes of communication. Because it is a payment instrument. Now, whether it is legal or not, yes, it's not illegal at least. But it's not a banknote or coin with a different denomination, not euro, I don't know, bits, that will not by law acquire the status of legal tender, may circulate for the settlement of monetary debts.
That's my conclusion. And this is really, really shortcut. Freely in parallel with the euro. And if a private money, like Bitcoin, which is not private, stateless money, it's forbidden to forbid it. If two people choose to settle their transaction in Bitcoins, nobody can say anything against it. It's illegal to forbid it. Now I have a question, a Greek question, in after the monetary. What is a monetary debt? A monetary debt is something that is legally denominated in the unit of currency that is being issued by some issuing authority who has been authorized to do this job, so to issue cash. Because bank money, deposits, really, by definition, they are not euros. It's the convertibility on demand at par that allows the bank transfers to settle monetary debts. Because if you take away that if you take away the convertibility, what you have is just digits, and they are really digits. It's not legal tender. So that's where, at least it became for me very interesting, and I started to read about what is legal tender. So back in 2009, not 2011, the Commission wanted to address the issue of a common definition of legal tender across the Eurozone. Because primary law, remember they say that euro banknotes and coins shall be the only legal tender, nothing else. So what is legal tender? I can just put a word in there. What is it? And they presented the report. Central bankers, experts from the finance ministry, from other institutions. They presented the report in 2010. And the Commission, based on this report, issued a recommendation in 2010 on the scope and effects of legal tender. But the recommendation is not something binding in the Eurozone. It's just a recommendation, what the word says. And in the preamble, it says something which is astonishing. There is currently some uncertainty at euro area level with regards to the scope of legal tender and the consequences thereof. I mean, primary law says euro banknotes and coins are legal tender, but we don't know exactly what it is. So let's put, after 10 years, some experts to decide and tell us, what is it in the end? And the report is very amazing. Let's read it. The report is astonishing in itself. The concept of legal tender encounters that of contractual freedom. And that's what I was telling you earlier. We decide to settle our transaction with a check from a bank. Okay, that's not the transfer of cash. It doesn't involve cash, but it's based on contractual freedom. We accept it now. We accept it maybe on the basis that we can convert it into cash, but it's not cash. And it says in all member states the status of legal tender granted to euro banknotes referred to hereinafter as cash means that cash is a valid means of payment to settle a monetary debt, because only cash can settle a monetary debt, unless the parties have agreed on other means of payment. Well, anything that is not cash is not legal. Yes.
Is this a verbatim thing of the report?
Yes. It's copy-paste, didn't change one word. Okay? So, for the purposes of acquiring legal tender, a large majority of the members agreed that notes and coins were issued when they had entered to the liability side of the balance sheet of an issuing authority. That's very important. So how does money, not money, but how does cash come into existence? Because the central bank prints notes. That's what it says. That's a liability. That's an entry to the liability side. But money comes into circulation as a liability on the liability side of the balance sheet of a commercial bank, and that's 90% or more of the money supply. So what do they say here? You acquire the status of legal tender, which is primary law in the European Union. I mean, there's nothing higher than this. If cash is recorded on the liability side of the central bank, well, that's peanuts. That's less than 10% of the money supply.
I think it's about 3.
No, it's a bit more,
More.
yeah, because of the crisis.
You include reserves in this. You include
No,
reserves,
reserves
in,
is something different.
but I think it's
Reserves are not cash.
No, the reserves to the banks.
Reserves are not cash.
No,
they're not well.
no, no.
Reserves are not cash.
No. They are recognized titles that they retain, or assets that they retain.
Okay, but the liabilities on the ECB,
But they are not cash.
on the authority, or not on central banks, like cash and coins, they're recorded on the liability side
It
of
depends,
the.
they are recorded on both sides.
The commercial banks are, yes, obliged to have some reserves.
Not the collateral. I'm saying about the liability. Okay, never
Some
mind.
reserves in order to make loans, but they represent.
I'll give you an example. Currently, more central banks in the world are buying commercial paper, whatever it is. Okay. So where do the central banks find the money? I mean, they don't give them cash. They don't give to the commercial banks cash. They give them reserves. So what is a reserve? It's just a digital entry.
They credit and debit the reserves actually.
Yeah.
On the liability side of the central bank, they have reserves, but on the asset side is the paper that they buy. Now, on the other hand, you may have reserves on the asset side of the central bank because the commercial banks, under the minimum reserve requirements, for example, in the US it's 10%, in the Eurozone it's 1% for assets or loans above 2 billion euros. They have to deposit 1%. So that's an asset for the central. So it may be recorded on both sides. So the report goes on. Nevertheless, and that's what I was telling earlier, it was agreed on the union level that although bank transfers were a perfectly valid means of payment to settle a monetary debt, their acceptance has not been made universally mandatory so that they cannot benefit from legal tender status. Do you understand what they say here? What they actually say is that anyone who does not present to you cash, you can just simply decline the transaction. That's what they say. This is crystal clear. So, that's what I'm saying. And it's astonishing to discover that probably more than 90% of the money supply does not enjoy the status of legal tenders. Its deposits are creating the liability side of the balance sheet of commercial banks when they give loans. And bank credit creation is really private money. That's what it is. It's private money. And the whole idea about bank guarantees and deposit guarantees is the convertibility into cash. We have allowed, it's a banker's world, okay? We have allowed the banking system to create loans. And when we want to get our money, we have deposits, we can convert them. And we ask for guarantees. This is stupid. It's stupid, simply stupid. And the funny thing is, it's even funnier, okay? That governments, technically in the Eurozone, do accept already for the discharge of taxes and other monetary debts, non-legal tender payment instruments. I mean, in Greece, you cannot pay your taxes with cash. I think you know that. You go to the bank, you go to the IRS or to the FODA, and you can't pay it in cash. You have to go to the bank. And I'm not talking about
That's actually illegal against the.
It's against.
What's that in there?
the
Donorismo, the definition
Yeah,
of
it's
legal
against-
tender, because what's cash is the only legal tender, and if
Yeah.
it cannot,
It's
if
not
it cannot be accepted by the Euphoria, then
And they have done something even
what
worse.
sort of illegal tender?
Although it might sound weird, but I'm going to say that under circumstances, I would have supported the idea for the abolition of cash. Yeah, but that's a different discussion. What they've done in Greece after capital with the capital controls is that they have penalized the refusal of accepting payments with credit cards, which is even worse than this. Because it's against the primary law of the European Union. This is all fascinating, and at least for me, when I was researching these things about a year ago or so, it's fascinating stuff. So what's my argument? My argument is that a non-cash, because cash is legal tender, non-legal tender, digital payment instrument that is not recorded into existence in the liability side of the balance sheet of a monetary authority. We have only one, the Bank of Greece. We don't need a second. Or isn't a transferable deposit converted? It could be a deposit, okay? But it's not a transferable deposit. Convertible on demand at par into units of currency. If I present to you bitcoins, okay, someone can refuse to convert them into cash. Doesn't mean that you cannot, okay? It's a private contract. Now, this means of payment can circulate on a voluntary basis in parallel with the euro for the settlement of technically non-monetary debt transactions. Why? Because monetary debts or monetary transactions, and this is only legal stuff, refer only to the settlement of payments, of transactions involving cash with euro banknotes, nothing else. If these transactions are not denominated in euros. So can we have parallel currencies in euros? I think everywhere or anywhere in the European Union, it will be legal. Actually, it would be illegal to forbid it. As far as I have understood the laws of the Greek.
There are some who are using
Yeah, in Germany, but they are private.
that.
There are more than 5,000 circulating in Europe.
5,000 different currencies.
Currencies also.
There are more than, I don't know, 700 cryptocurrencies at the moment. With the largest one, of course, being Bitcoin. So, what was the problem last year? And I don't know whether it's a problem since today, because I found it out today. Was the charter, the statute of the Bank of Greece. Probably most of you know, the Bank of Greece was created back in 1928. The statute was an annex to an international treaty. It was signed in 1937 in Geneva. It's called the Geneva Protocol. And the bank was really created after a loan that has been issued under the auspices of the League of Nations at that time. It was an international issuance. And the provisions of the statute have the force of law superior over any other provision of domestic law. It's even above the Greek constitution, the Charter of the Bank of Greece. It's the statute of the Bank of Greece. These are quotations, direct quotations from the Bank of Greece. Okay, they are not my words. So I could talk for days about the Bank of Greece. Last year, Article 3, that hasn't been amended since 1928. The Article 3 said that the Greek state undertakes the obligation during the period of privilege granted to the bank not to issue or reissue money of any type. Stop, I don't know, the rest is irrelevant. not to issue or reissue money. How on earth can any country not simply transfer the right of issue to a central bank, okay? But simply voluntarily decline the right to create a unit of account. That's what it comes down to. In the United States, the dollar is a unit of account of the United States. And the government of the United States has given monopoly rights of issuance to the Federal Reserve, but the Federal Reserve does not issue dollars. The Federal Reserve issues Federal Reserve notes denominated in dollars. Dollars is a national unit of account. What it says here is that the Greek state doesn't have the right to create a unit of account.
Other than
That's mine.
bonds and circulations.
Sorry?
But you're ignoring the second half, which you put a period in that doesn't exist, but makes all the difference. Is that not?
No, because other than coins means the Greek government can create only coins. If the Bank of Greece...
Coins or notes?
Huh?
Coins and notes, the same thing.
No. It cannot create notes. It can create only coins. Nothing else. That's what it says. Of any type, it cannot create money of any type. Other than coins.
Higher than 1,000 drachma.
So not higher.
Not higher, so you can do up to 1,000 drachma.
Yes, you can issue and such coins only through the bank at its request or Persian law.
Okay.
Okay? So what is important is this phrase, not to issue or reissue money. I mean, believe me, I could go through central bank statutes, but it would be boring. There is no, at least in the West, there is no other statute anywhere in the world with such a clause inside. Nowhere. There are different approaches. Okay, there are. Listen, this is another observation. We're talking here 2015, 2016, but the Greek state says that money of any kind of other coins not higher than 1,000 drachma. What is the currency of this country? Back in 1928, the purpose for the creation of the Bank of Greece was to stabilize the Greek currency. Was not to stabilize something else. So, and this is with a big question mark here, because I don't feel confident about saying it, but there is a specific reason why the word drachma still exists in the statute of the Bank of Greece, and not only still exists, but when the euro was introduced into Greece, the statute of the Bank of Greece was amended in 20 or 30, I can't remember, articles to insert the word drachma. We were introducing the euro and they were inserting the word drachma with a declaration behind it that the substitution of the drachma with the euro and blah 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 went in with like that. But they inserted the word drachma when we were going to adopt. Why? It's a different story we can discuss it. So no other, and this is true. No other central bank contains articles like that. They say all sorts of different things. There are central bank statutes, for example, that don't even refer to legal tender or to units of account or to the currency. I think the Bank of Italy doesn't have any reference to the euro banknotes or to the unit of account of the country. Nothing. But interesting is the Deutsche Bundesbank. Banknotes in euros shall be the sole unrestricted legal tender. So why is there restricted legal tender? Yes, there is. By definition, anyone who presents more than 50 coins in the Eurozone, let's say 51 decline the payment. So, and that's the regulation for the introduction of the euro. Okay? So even the euro coins, they are restricted legal tender. That's a very interesting notion. Okay? It goes back to the monetary reform in Germany in 1948. That's where I found this term for the first time recently and understood it. So, could we actually have something would be a restricted legal tender for internal circulation only? I guess so. But now, based on this, Greece could not issue a complementary means of payment without violating the statutes of the Bank of Greece. And by that, when I say Greece, I say the public sector. Because the private sector can create whatever. Okay? If it's accepted as a payment instrument, it's okay. Okay? And the second option was for the introduction of a complementary means of payment was to amend the statute of the Bank of Greece. And that's what I am presenting you is something that I have written a year and a half ago. And actually, I received a citation in an academic journal from somebody in the United States, the Levy Institute. Well, surprise, surprise, that was my surprise today, because I've been fighting to change that article for the past 2 years. Article 3 has been changed, and the word money has been replaced by the word currency. What is currency? According to the European accounting standards for the European Union, currency is something which is issued by a monetary authority. Is it important that they have changed it? Yes. Because the issuance of the complementary means of payment does not involve a monetary authority. You don't want to create a second legal tender. And there are historical examples why you should not want to create a second legal tender. And that's Germany again, because everything we know comes from Germany, unfortunately. But what's going on? I mean, if I was talking earlier about digital payment instruments, it's very interesting that Bitcoin in Germany has already been recognized as a unit of account. And this is very important because it means that it does not fall under the definition of the VAT directive. It's not a commodity. And as a commodity, it doesn't carry VAT. And you cannot tax it. You cannot tax the euro banknote. Okay? Now that's already law in Germany. And it's already recognized as a financial instrument. It's not legal tender, but you can settle payments. You cannot be taxed, and there is a very big discussion in Germany, what are they going to do with the Bitcoin? As far as I know, in the United States, the Bitcoin is recorded as real estate, but I'm not quite sure. But I think
real estate?
Yes, I think it's recorded as real. I mean, if somebody acquires Bitcoins, you have to record it somewhere on your balance sheet. I mean, what is it? Is it a cash equivalent? Why is it a cash equivalent? Is it a commodity? I mean, is it inventory? Imagine that you have a balance sheet and you convert your cash into something, which is Bitcoin. What is Bitcoin? Is it a fixed asset? Is it a current asset? If it is a current asset, is it a cash equivalent? Or is it inventory?
Personal property.
Because those things
Personal property.
have to do a lot with taxation. I mean, if it's an inventory, transfer of it involves VAT. But in Germany, it's a unit of account, so it doesn't fall. It's the directive. I can't remember now. The directive of the VAT. Yes.
Excuse me, could you elaborate possibly a little bit more on the origins of Bitcoin and how it came about? I mean, I sort of forgot, but why is this possible?
As far as I know, it was someone who designed a fairly secure way to create a means of payment. Okay. Satoshi Nakamoto was his name, and the idea behind it is the blockchain. Put several computers to interconnect and mine a postulator, an algorithm. And the algorithm has a ceiling. You cannot mine more than 22, I think, million, something like that, bitcoins. But they can, their denominations, the denomination of the bitcoins, I think, goes up to the 8th digit after the comma. So you can multiply this 20 by 8, how much is it? And that's it.
But who's going to use that? Who can
It's
use it?
being used.
I mean, can I use it?
Sorry?
Can I use it?
Yes.
Yeah, you can pay a scholarship to Cypriot universities with bitcoins. You know what?
There are universities or there are companies in the United States or in Europe everywhere that accept bitcoins as payments.
Is there a list of what's a Bitcoin?
Sorry?
Can we find a list of what is a Bitcoin?
What is a bitcoin?
Yeah, I mean, what qualifies as a Bitcoin?
It's like a dollar.
It's like it's digital money
Yeah,
stored in let's say a digital wallet, and you can transfer it.
but it's based on what,
But it's not legal tender, like,
It's not legal.
It's based on what? The creation of Bitcoin.
you have to find somebody who will accept it.
You have to find it yourself. I mean, how do you get a Bitcoin if you want something?
yeah, I mean, is it based
But
on
you
what I
can
have
buy
in the bank?
Bitcoins.
or-
No,
But you can buy, yes?
It's You the can
You
creation.
buy it in euros or what?
You can buy
You
bitcoin.
buy them in euros.
Yeah, but that means it enters into the exchange system.
Right now, one
Okay.
Bitcoin costs around $600.
Okay.
Right
Those
now.
who
Just one.
Yes.
Yeah.
But
It's gone up.
I told you earlier. I mean, why do you accept a check
Let's
from a bank? Why?
What's the
why
advantage of buying a Bitcoin?
Huh?
Just
I mean, why someone accepts a check from the bank? And the only difference is that you don't know that accepting a check from the bank is not legal tender. That's a real difference.
Okay, this is actually because,
I mean, accepting cards, accepting checks, accepting anything else other than cash. It's a private contract. And the transfer is based on the confidence that you can convert the check into cash.
it's an
But
IOU.
that is something that you don't
You
know.
don't even need to
You
convert.
just believe in it.
It can be a
It's the
closed
same
system.
thing with the Bitcoin.
The electronic money that you see in the bank is actually an IOU.
Huh?
If the bank is,
Yes, yeah.
it's a liability of the
Of
bank.
course.
If the bank is, gets bankrupt, then you lose your money. It won't happen very easily. It has happened.
If your hen lays 10 chicks, okay, you get these 10 little chickens.
This is what the ECB is
And
actually
you-
saying.
I say, you know, will you give me those chickens? I don't have any money, but I'll give you a little piece of paper. I'll give you 10 pieces of paper, one for each chick, okay? And so John owes you 10 chicks, okay? And
I know, I will laugh.
okay.
Is this that like economic systems according to cows theory?
I accept you.
Yeah, okay. And now you've got these pieces of paper with my signature on it, right? And everybody knows what a reliable guy I am, right? So you go to the grocer and you say, listen, I don't have any money, but I've got these these papers from John, you know, who owes me these chicks. And he says, oh, from John, oh, okay. Great, what do you want? You want spaghetti? You want milk? Fine, you know. So you get all of this stuff, and he gets the papers with, you know, that John owes, now I owe this guy 10 chicks. Okay, so yeah, as long as you feel that I'm reliable, then, you know, those little pieces of paper, they can, you know, go, all over the place. And as long as you feel I'm reliable, I can keep issuing these little pieces of paper. And you know, you keep your hen laying chicks, and you give me the chicks, and then I sell the chicks to the butcher. He gives me hard cash, right? So I'm running a 2-currency economy. No, because a Ponzi scheme does not have a basis.
There's no real checks.
Yeah. I'm talking about
Only a few.
that's something that's convertible into a real asset. There's chicks behind this.
But I don't use my pieces of paper from you.
Well, it's an asset. It's like money in the bank. You keep them in your Sudoku. You can keep them.
When you sell the chicks to the hens, will you pay me ultimately?
Oh, if you want from me, then I sold the chicks, let's say, and I got some money, and you come back and you say, okay, you know, can I give you your little piece of paper back? And well, actually, I don't owe you a specific amount of money. What I owe you is little chicks, okay? And so, and in fact, this is the way the stock market works. And you know, you don't actually, the shares aren't really physically there, and so. So as long as I can then get somebody to give me chicks, to give you back chicks, then you know, I'll give you back your chicks. You know,
Assuming you'll accept chicks, maybe
Yeah.
you don't want chicks back.
And yeah, well, you gave me the chicks in the first place, so you're obviously trying to get rid of your chicks. And so the issue is that we've created now, and you know, everybody in this room, we can be eating a lot of chicken. And without ever having used euros.
Like barter and then.
Well, money is not.
Yes, that's how it started. I mean, if you take the theory of money, that's how it started. And Greece. Sorry, I got carried away a little bit. I'll take just 5 seconds. Greece used to barter until it entered the European Union. I was on the board of the Epimελiterio, the EVA, and I was part of the Epitropy that was responsible for Greece's bartering with Yugoslavia.
Yeah.
And we would sit down once a year and we would say, okay, what does Greece have for you and what do you have for us? And basically we had tomatoes and oranges, and they had plastics and motors, and those were the main items. But we would also talk about details, and we would have a clearance system where they got so many tomatoes and oranges, and we got so many motors and so many tons of plastic raw material, and it worked. And in fact, you could go take it to the second level, because you could trade the motors to Russia in order to get tractors. And so there was a second level to this, which I was not part of.
That's a 1930s idea, the clearing system.
Yeah, and it worked beautifully.
So now,
It was until the introduction of euro.
Until Greece entered the euro and the EVA lost its when we entered the euro, we no longer had to go to the EVA to apply for foreign currency, because we used to have to, in order to buy something from Germany in Deutschmark, I would have to get an import license, which I would get from EVA. And EVA would only give me the import license if Greece had enough in exchange in order to match that. Or there were some allowances, because Greece was always running a deficit, but it would then, you know, balance these things out. But if they had the money, they would, you know, give me a license, and then I could go with that to the bank, and the bank would then pay from Deutschmark reserves. They would pay the Germans. If we leave the euro, exactly that kind of system which operated until the year 2000. I mean, it was only 16, 17 years ago, in fact less, 16 years ago.
No, not with the West, probably.
Yeah, it was before the iron cartel.
Yes.
No. We
So,
import
not-
licenses you had to
Yes,
get
but-
up until,
But the licenses, but the licenses were for real money.
Yeah.
The kind of clearance that.
no, I
happened-
switched subjects. I said,
Yeah.
we used to barter and
Okay.
clear, that's one thing.
Yeah.
But we used to also control our currency reserves by issuing, by obliging people who wanted hard currency to get a license. And you got a license depending on what you were doing. By the way,
But at the moment with capital controls, you could have mostly safe.
in fact, I was just about to say exactly that, is that today, capital controls are supposed to be a big problem, right? But it's not a big problem if you're a Greek manufacturer. You go to the bank and you say, I want this money for raw material. You got it like that, same day. Same day if it's less than 20,000 euros, 18,000 actually. And the next day if it's more, because they have an epitropi and they double check to make sure that, you know. And so effectively, I'm getting an import license. So we're controlling our euros.
But you started to say if we leave the
Pardon me?
euro, if we leave the euro, you started to say, what?
Well, we would employ these mechanisms, which we did. We used these
There's
mechanisms.
no way to go to a national currency without some sort of a transitional period.
Oh yeah.
It's impossible. You don't switch the button and you say, tomorrow I have drachmas. Whatever.
This is a very important
Why should you live in Europe?
issue that many people.
Hmm?
This is a very important issue that lots of people have different aspects of how is it going to be, will a transition be, and some people thought that it could be overnight. Okay, I don't know.
It's impossible.
For me, it would be interesting to hear your.
I mean, one thing that they say, for example, is the problem will be the currency, the new currency will devalue rapidly. I mean, okay, how does something devalue? They presuppose that the currency will achieve somehow worldwide circulation. And some people even say, you know, you have fire sales in the world market, ανοιχτά συμβόλαια, okay, in the forex exchange. But for someone to sell the currency, even if a sale is not covered, okay, he needs to find later on the currency. Now, who is going to give him the currency? It's stupid to say that the currency will devalue by 50 or 60, 70 or whatever percent. It's stupid. So somebody, in order to sell it, you need to have it. And if you sell it on the world market in the foreign exchange, it's an open sale. I mean, it's not in the forex.
If you sell it short, you mean?
If you're short, yeah, if you short the currency, you need to find it later. Who is going to give it to you? So, by definition, it's something that is under the control of the government. Now, how are we going to devalue? If Greece continued to have current account deficit, and we need to finance imports with a foreign currency, now yes, the currency will find its way into the foreign markets, and then on whatever circulation, okay, it might lose value. Crystal clear. I'm sorry, I'm not against the devaluation, okay? I'm by definition against what is going on now. 70% of all IMF programs have three parameters. One, increase in taxes, not decrease. Increase in taxes. And whoever says that neoliberalism is about decrease in taxes doesn't know what it is. 70% of all IMF programs, in all IMF programs, we have tax increases. The second is liberalization of the labor market. The third one being liberalization of capital flows and opening up markets, products and services. But in 70% of all programs, or even more, we have one more parameter, which is the devaluation of the currency. Now, you didn't have that in Greece. So by definition, internal devaluation was the only way for the program to be adopted. There was no other way. With one problem, there was no model. And they accepted this about 3 or 4 months ago. There is no model for a country like Greece, which needs at the same time to achieve a fiscal surplus, and you need to drive growth, not from consumption, which at the moment, consumption is more than 90% of the GDP, okay? You need to drive growth by investment, and even more, you need an export-led growth, okay? There is no model that you can achieve for more. There are 17 countries from 1980 afterwards, 17 countries that have achieved for more than 3 years at least 3.5% fiscal surplus with whatever percent current account surplus. And out of those 17 countries, for at least 3 years, 9 countries are the Gulf. They were exporting oil. 2 or 3 are banking centers like Singapore, Hong Kong, Switzerland, and blah, blah, blah. Norway, which is also, okay. So we don't have, there is no model. So what is the program? I mean,
But actually,
what are they trying to achieve?
Experiment. Is Greece an experiment?
Yes, it is an experiment. It is an experiment. And it is not, it's not as if someone could come and say, you know, why did Ireland achieve it? People don't know what happened in Ireland. In Ireland, back in 2011, what the Greek sector has done with the Greek central bank has done with the ELA, okay, the Irish central bank with the Irish government decided to buy the non-performing loans using the ELA. So they cleared their banking sector. In Greece, where is the banking sector? They say, why is Cyprus is exiting the program? Is exiting the program because they had capital controls day one. That's the reason why. I mean, can you go back 5 years ago and put capital controls in the country? You would have 100 billion deposits more.
You would have saved the ELA.
You wouldn't have this boom in the non-performing loans, because what is a non-performing loan? It's not simply that people can't repay back their debts.
The debts?
It's deposits have been drained, and it's really an accounting issue. So you need to pump up the liability side of the balance sheet of the commercial banking sector. So here comes the government, and they issue guarantees, if they are accepted by the European Central Bank as collateral, in order for the banks to raise liquidity to cover their assets. I'm sorry for the word. Now, do you know this has cost at least, these numbers are recorded, okay? Only this has, the cost to the country is 14 billion euros increase in national debt. Only this thing, to pump up, not the capital base, the liability side, the balance sheet of the banks. And God knows what's going to come afterwards, okay? So, there was no model. And still there is no model. Ireland is not the model of Greece. Because the Irish have pumped 60 billion, if I remember the figures correctly, okay, into their banking sector using the ELA to clean the balance sheets. They don't have non-performing loans at the moment. They have created a national asset management agency managing all loans. Banking problem, no problem. Here we still have a problem. There is no country as far as I have read, okay, in the past 100 years, where you see the balance sheet of your central bank reaching 100% in comparison to GDP, and this country to have 7 consecutive years of recession and 5 consecutive years of deflation. There is no example like that. People are rightly, okay, we all rightly accuse what is going on with central banks. You know, negative interest rates, they buy everything, all junk from the banking sector. Yes, okay, their balance sheets are 30, 40% of GDP. In March 2012, right at the heart of the PSI, the balance sheet of the Bank of Greece was 100% in comparison with GDP. How is it possible to have recession and deflation? There's something wrong. Not with the system, there's certainly something wrong. That's the monetary system. But in the Eurozone, everything is wrong.
You're saying that the Bank of Greece has in some sort of asset,
The asset side or the liability side.
200 million euros.
Exactly, yes.
And the liability side,
200 billion as well.
which, which is primarily
they are
money it's borrowed
target to borrowing from the other central banks in the European Union.
Okay. So it's withholding, it's withholding
Yes,
monetary
but
assets.
that borrowing, which is really it's reserves, okay?
Right.
It's recorded under the target 2, account 9, the liability side of the Bank of Greece. Where does this money go? It goes into the banking sector buying assets. Why do they need to buy these assets? In order to give them, to pump up the liability side of the commercial banking sector because of the draining in deposits. And what is the
They give them
draining in
liquidity,
deposits?
actually.
Okay, yeah.
But on the other hand, in July last year, the problem that we had was a problem linked to the fact that the Greek economy is working a lot with cash. And exchanges are done with cash. And the problem, the very concrete problem that existed was that the cash, the authorization by the European Central Bank to the Greek Central Bank, and through them to the commercial banks, to release banknotes to those having an account in these banks, has been suddenly stopped.
No.
So, explain how this didn't happen and why there was a lack of provision of banknotes to the ATMs on these days, or a serious risk of that.
I remember last year, I'm writing a lot on social media.
Yeah.
Okay. And I remember last year I tried to, okay, let's imagine that we have 100 billion euros in deposits. And let's imagine that we need to convert everything into cash within 8 hours. My background comes from logistics. Okay. So I was trying to, work with figures, and I found out that I needed 17 or 18 kilometers of trucks.
To get,
Okay.
okay.
And I think I needed about 1,050 mini trucks to get them within 8 hours from a single distribution center into every, but even if you do that, it's impossible for people to withdraw it. So they would probably have souvlaki party outside the banks. Okay? It's impossible to withdraw the money for logistic purposes.
Yeah.
Even if they existed, everything.
No,
Okay?
I was, yeah.
So on the balance sheet of the central bank has here currency in circulation. Okay, and this is, I think now at the moment in Greece is about 29 billion. Okay. Now if you go to the monetary aggregates, currency in circulation is not 29 billion, it's a billion less, more or less. Why? Because they exchange old notes for new notes. Okay? Now, accounting in the euro, in the European system of central banks, in their logistiko schedule, accounting framework.
Principles or whatever.
Okay. There is, if I remember correctly, 9.2, account 9.2, which is euro banknotes that we owe to the central banks of the euro system. This figure here, I think now it's something like 18 billion. It's about 18 billion. Okay. That figure I think was 23 billion last July, but I'm not quite sure. Okay. So
You mean the 18 or the 20 or the whole?
23, July last year. July
What's now 18 was 23.
was 23 or 24, I can't remember. Okay. So this figure never went down to zero after I think October or November, something like that, 2010. It went down as low as 3 billion. Okay, but when things started to change sometime in September or October 2014, if you remember, Stournaras went out to the public twice. This is a crime what he did. I think one in Frankfurt and one here, and saying that if you vote for Syriza, we will have a banking problem. If you check the figures of what's going on afterwards, you have cash withdrawals. It's since then, again, for the second time, we start to import banknotes to distribute them. So actually, and these figures are more or less correct.
Okay.
From 2001 to 2016, we have withdrawn from the banks about 47 billion euros
In cash.
in cash. But after 2009, okay, we have withdrawn 26.9 billion euros. The rest, it's from the past. And for every 100 euros that appears as a deposit in the bank, you have 1.16 euros on average since 2001. Cash at banks since 2001, on average, they are 1.16 euros per 100 on average. So, you have deposits.
Sorry,
You can-
My question was, okay,
There was no problem, that's what I'm trying to say. There was a problem, but what was a logistics problem?
so why there was a logistics problems? Because there
We're
was
trying to distribute.
There was not any.
When we say logistics,
any-
we mean accounting.
No.
Logistics.
Getting it out there.
But there was no any
Delivery of the-
additional. It was business as usual in terms of what was expected to have as withdrawals on the banks. The question that Greece had to face was this threat of coming from the central bank of not giving, because it's not only a question of availability, of physical availability, it's a question of the right to release
No,
money.
the right to release money. The European Central Bank has a capital base, I don't know, 7 billion euros or 10 billion euros,
Yeah.
and issuance is based on the capital key. You cannot issue as much as you want.
No.
Every country can issue up to, I don't know, 2% or whatever percent, and every year they take a decision on how much Greece is going to print, how much Germany is going to print, okay? And this decision doesn't change. Okay. So if you need more cash, you need to borrow. You can't increase cash. Is it wrong? Probably it's wrong. Okay. If you have the deposit base, why not have the cash? But it's by definition, not by definition, but the way that the ECB operates, they print money based on certain rules. Okay, as the rule is the capital key.
Okay, that's all
So
that's.
what is your question? Maybe I don't understand.
Within the extraordinary circumstances of July 2015, there was a restriction by central bank, by the European Central Bank, in terms of availability of cash for circulation in Greece. And this was a key question that determined a lot of the decisions that were taken at this moment. And this is how we, through which mechanism because this contradicts a little bit the big availability of cash money as you had described in the first
No, I
graphic.
didn't describe the availability. I described
The existence
cash is overshooting.
of a big increase of cash in circulation in Greece, while at the same time we had a problem of shortage of cash availability on these days, under which, and in fact, it was only the first part of my question, and let us not discuss too much if there was this cash available this night, unlimited cash available in the cash machines. The question is that when you do not, when you rely on an economy which is only on cash, on the legal tender, then you are absolutely bound to the rules up on this legal tender, and you are more bound to the central bank policy, or politics, I would say, than when you are not relying so much. And this is a very important question, because according to your discourse, you are saying that to have cash is the normal and legal way of going. But this normal and legal way of going is extremely restricting your freedom of move in terms that you are completely under the rules of the ones who are controlling the euro system. And all the discussion about the parallel currencies, to go back to the political dimension of it, has been on the fact that if we had introduced last year, or if we managed to introduce less dependence from cash, then we have a margin of maneuver which is greater towards the euro system, which is only the one who is completely regulating the availability of cash and has no, at the end, so much competence on the rest.
First of all, I don't know whether there was a restriction by the ECB that prevented the Bank of Greece to increase the cash base. Okay, what I know is what I told you earlier, that these are rules and they operate in a way like that. Second,
I remember something like what you're saying, was that
second, if there was a problem in terms of supplying cash to the ATMs, that's the room for maneuver. 18 to 23, I don't remember the figures now, at the point of height. Okay. Third, obviously, I mean, people did not have confidence. They want to withdraw their deposits. So whether this would be, whether the increase, okay, the decrease, or the decreased dependence, I don't know, I'm trying to use your words, would be something beneficial, would have helped, I don't know, the Greek government, either against the creditors or would have helped for in the introduction of a parallel means of payment, I'm not sure. Because the problem is not cash. Cash is a problem of confidence. And I'll give you an example, and that's something that, okay, off the record, on the record, I know. They presented last year, during the negotiations, to the Troika, a proposal that would increase the circulation of, not would increase, that would actually motivate, they would give kinitra, incentives. They would give incentives to the people to use plastic money. Now, based on what the European Union was saying, Greece has a VAT problem in terms of evasion of something like 8 to 9 billion euros.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's say that we want to interrupt that by giving incentives for the people using it. You know, what's the figure that the Troika put behind the plan for the introduction of
electronic money.
Huh?
Of
electronic money. What's it? Because these things have a fiscal, they have a number. So you have an 8 billion euros problem, VAT evasion. So you want to catch something out of this. So you say to the people, if you use your credit card, I will reduce your VAT, I will give you a tax credit, I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay, I will give you something.
You win a chicken at the end of the...
How much money did they put in there?
You mean how much
Yeah, what's
they
If
anticipate
that, yeah. How much?
in terms of possible additional collection of VAT through the introduction of this obligation?
60 million euros.
Nothing.
Nothing. You know why?
Yes.
They don't want it. That's not their problem.
They don't.
That's mine.
Who doesn't want it?
They don't want it.
Well, it's quite possible.
Who? They don't, no, they are not interested.
No.
They are
In
not.
introducing
This is
more
this is-
electronic.
We are going out of the.
Yeah.
It's another.
Yeah.
Why they are not interested is not.
Because they don't care.
Yeah.
What they care, they took it this year.
Yeah.
And it's the new fund.
Yeah.
What new fund?
The new
The
Pertamio.
privatization fund.
That's what they wanted since day one. In the banking sector, in the end of the day,
Well,
if
Pertamio.
Yeah, it's the yes.
What's this new fund?
I'm missing a lot of this.
Hyper fund?
Sorry.
yeah, the hyper fund or whatever fund,
What is
the fund
it?
where all assets of the Greek state have been transferred.
Yeah.
Oh, type A, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
The old
Oh.
Taipei, which
The
was
old type A.
transformed to another.
Oh, real assets, real assets.
This is what the IMF wanted.
No, the Germans.
Yeah.
Back in 2011, there was a company called Roland Berger. Okay.
Yeah.
And they, that's a German consultancy. So they presented a plan for the creation of a privatization fund, blah, 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 which would have its headquarters in Luxembourg. So the Greek state would have transferred all.
The first proposition.
That's the first proposition. The Greek state would have transferred all assets into this fund against, as a collateral, against inception of new funds in order to reduce the national debt. Okay, and that's what they got. And as far as the banking sector, I mean, if you ask me, the discussion is turning again. Whatever the government, I mean, this government has been elected last year to do some things, okay, and they got the backing of 62% with the referendum. So, from my perspective, since let's say, in our imagination, we want to stay in the Eurozone, okay? Maybe it's also a political decision, and maybe the people support it by 80%. I couldn't care less. So, when you go to negotiate, you need to have one, two things that you wouldn't give in. So it is irrelevant really whether you raise taxes or lower taxes, whether you raise pensions, whether you lower pensions. You want to stay in the Eurozone, it's crystal clear, it's internal devaluation. Now there are two ways to do it, okay? Reduce costs, raise taxes. There's no other way to do it. You need to reduce purchasing power at the end of the day. That's what it goes down to. It's irrelevant whether you raise the taxes or whether you lower the costs. It's macroeconomic
Equivalent.
okay. So what was in the end of the day, what is the problem? The problem is the banking sector, one.
If you reduce
So,
purchasing power, then
you
somebody
need-
else
you
comes
need-
and buys.
You should have find a way to resolve the problem of the non-performing loans. Day one, as the Irish did it. Okay? Even if that involved going against the Treaty of the European Union, like the Italians are doing, which is monetary financing. Okay? That's one thing that they should have done. It's the banking sector, the NPLs and the way that would have been recapitalized. And the second thing is, okay, I need to take measures. Now, all the measures, okay, whether it is reduction of costs or increase in taxes, all these measures are, by definition, pro-cyclical. I mean, they are recessionary. So you need to create mechanisms to overcome this. Because if you want internal devaluation, okay, which personally I accept it. That's why that's why I'm for a currency devaluation. In my opinion was 70% reduction, okay, in our living standards in 2010. That's my approach, which is the worst on the program. You can leave the euro,
You can't do that. You can't leave the euro. I mean,
You
Yes, you can.
the whole premise is ridiculous because it's a bigger story here. The problem that was created was that you've got a monetary system with 25 different monetary policies. And so
Yeah.
what should have really happened is unify Europe into one economic entity, just like the United States.
I agree, yeah.
Okay,
So
but it's not gonna happen.
If anybody followed through with that, we wouldn't be here today.
Of course,
Yeah,
I
but we're not
agree.
gonna, that's not gonna
But
happen.
this is wishful thinking if you
Yeah.
want to unify Europe.
Yeah,
Because it took us 70 years to reach the level of integration that we have today. I'm 45, I don't have another 70 years.
Through other things, we have also.
I want solutions, now.
We also had a disintegration recently. What I was expecting to have more clearly in this is the interest of the parallel currencies as what is the interest? You explain that there could be a legality, but what at the end of the game
Yes,
is the interest?
I told you from the beginning that
That's my last
I told you from the beginning that the presentation was from an institutional perspective. I have been involved in the development of one proposal, the introduction of a parallel currency, and we are working on a second one now. Team, okay, both are asset-backed. Okay, the first one last year, which was a really small plan, was a fiscal currency. By fiscal, I mean it was the backing was future tax revenues in euros that were transferred into a development bank. Okay, and against this, you issued something, distributing it. I don't want to go into the details. And the second one that is how to how to
Blackmail.
yeah, how to blackmail, how to extort growth or blackmail growth. And this is an idea for a real estate asset-backed currency. It is a German plan back in 1923. And what we are working on is projects that could bring within, that could bring 120 to 150 billion euros of investments in whatever time frame, but against those
investment into what?
I'll give you an example.
Yeah. But let's say I got $1 billion, right?
Yeah.
And I'm gonna invest it in Greece. What am I gonna do with it?
Could I interrupt just before you answer that? We are like 20 minutes, 25, oh my God, half an hour over our exit time. And so we need to clear this. Is there any objection to going down the street to Taverna and carrying on the conversation?
Can I answer this and then?
Yeah, and I want this one last question, and if so, drop some more money, another euro in the kitty, and let's give her a tip for the extra half hour.
So, I'll give you an example. Greece has 16,000 kilometers of seaside. We want 0.05% of it to be transferred with no value. When I say no value, I mean no commercial value. It hasn't been commercialized, okay? Transfer this into the development bank. Αυτό πω ελληνικά, I'm sorry, okay? Και με έναν διεθνή διαγωνισμό θα γίνει μια σύμβαση παραχώρησης όπου θα πάρουν. Σας είπα ένα παράδειγμα, γιατί τα project αυτά που έχουν στηθεί είναι γύρω στα 150 δισεκατομμύρια. Θα παραχωρηθεί με σύμβαση σε ιδιώτες μετά από διαγωνισμό δωρεάν 1 χιλιόμετρο ακτής μέσα από ένα business plan το οποίο θα καταθέσει ο ιδιώτης, έτσι, ότι θα επενδύσω, ας πούμε, είπατε 1 δις ευρώ για να φτιάξω μαρίνα, να φτιάξω ξενοδοχείο, να φτιάξω και να φτιάξω άλλο. Υπάρχουν τέτοιου είδους project τα οποία έχουν αποτυπωθεί σε χαρτί από μια ομάδα μηχανικών, οι οποίοι τα έχουν μελετήσει αρκετά βαθιά. Έχουμε μελετήσει project λοιπόν τουλάχιστον 120 εκατομμύρια τώρα.
Nobody's going to make the investment because there's no legal, there's no labor. The legal labor and tax laws are so bad that you got to be crazy to come and do that project.
Είναι προϋπόθεση αυτό το πράγμα να έχει ένα φάκελο. Είναι προϋπόθεση το πράγμα αυτό να έχει ένα φάκελο.
That's an economist looking at it. But economists don't actually run businesses. Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna pack it up, move it down the road, and argue about reality versus theory. Oh, thank you for everybody who came.
Χρειαζόμαστε καινούριο πτωχευτικό, καινούριο φορολογικό, καινούριο εργατικό.
It's really interesting.